Another big day of racing is ahead, this time at Tampa Bay Downs for Tampa Bay Derby Day. I'm Gino Bacola alongside Barry Spears, the sniper, and we're going to be talking about the stakes races on Saturday over at Tampa Bay Downs. There are Kentucky Derby points on the line in the Tampa Bay Derby, and there are some really intriguing undercard races, a couple really strong races, some nice betting races. I'm excited to talk about these with my good friend Barry in just a moment. First, I want to encourage all of you, when you're handicapping the races, always get to drf.com to do so. You can actually get free past performances, the past performances that we're going to look at right now. When you sign up for a DRF Bets account, right off the bat, they'll give you a $200 match deposit bonus, and they'll load you up with 10 free all-access past performances. And then following that, every time you bet $50, you get credit for another set of past performances. Barry, buddy, can you believe we are into the last round of Kentucky Derby preps now? I mean, it feels real now when there's just one more big prep at each track from the next month or so to get us all ready for the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, man, it's coming fast, and I don't think I'm prepared for it because I really don't have my teeth into the Derby trail right now. Everybody's kind of looking the same, and nobody's standing out. So this is going to be a real difficult year, I think.
Well, in the last couple of preps, it's hard to take a lot out of. The Fountain of Youth got scratched down to a field of 4, and a lot of the major contenders were out. So it's tough to take. I know, what do we take out of that from Dornick? And now he only has one prep left to go. And at Santa Anita, we had a field of 4, and the 2 horses that run 1-2 were both Baffert horses. So this year they're not eligible to run in the Derby. So the last few races that we've seen, it's hard to take a whole lot out of. We're going to know a lot in this next round of preps. The thing about the Tampa Bay Derby in particular, I don't know if there's going to be a Kentucky Derby winner in there. There are a couple horses that'll take a lot of money, and then no doubt a lot of unproven horses. But I'm kind of more excited with the card as a whole and some of the undercard races, which I think are really intriguing.
Yeah, it's kind of the rare situation where you have a big day at a track and the headlining race isn't as good as everything else.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a bad race by any means, but it's not as good as we would think at this time of year in this placement for the Tampa Bay Derby. But we're obviously going to make the most of it, and hopefully, you never know, we could get some freak that comes out of this race.
Absolutely.
I mean, it comes from anywhere.
Lightly raced horses that are developing and rapidly improving a ton. We'll get into the Tampa Bay Derby, which is race number 11, but we're going to go through all the stakes races on the card. It's a 12-race card, and we have stakes races in the 6th, the 7th, and then the 9th, 10th, and 11th are graded stakes races. So 5 stakes on the card. I think the 8th is like an overnight handicap, but there are a couple horses that are kind of cross-entered in a few spots, so we're going to skip that one. We're going to go 5, 6, and then 9, 10, and 11, do our best to help, or we'll go 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, do our best to help lead you in the right direction. Barry, we kick things off with the Grade 3 Challenger. This is race number 6. They're going to go a mile and a 16th on the dirt in here. So the way this race looks to me on paper, you have a couple of these horses that are more proven, horses that we know well, like the number 2, Dynamic 1, and the number 3, Skippy Longstocking. Both these horses are super accomplished. Dynamic 1 is a horse who was second in the Wood Memorial, ran in the Kentucky Derby, and won the Grade 2 Suburban last year, or in 2022, then had a long time off and has come back and run twice. Hasn't really run very well since coming back from the long layoff. Skippy, super honest horse who's earned $1.5 million, was 3rd in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, but he's coming off a race where he just got pulled up in the Pegasus World Cup. So for the 2 horses that are likely to be the 2 betting choices in here, they definitely have some question marks.
Absolutely. It's always a pause for cause when you see a horse kind of not finish a race and then show up somewhere else, like Skippy Longstocking is doing. But I have to say, if there's anybody that could be the quintessential Grade 3 horse, it's definitely Skippy Longstocking. If you
Absolutely.
see his best performances, he wins Grade 3s.
This is where he fits really well.
Absolutely. This is a drop in class from the Pegasus. He probably needed that race on top of everything else. So I'm not going to be too harsh on him for that effort or lack thereof. But really, what it comes down to for me is how much do you think Impacto is going to get in Skippy's way? If Impacto gets in his way and kind of gives him a little tussle early, it might cause some problems and could open this race up for
Yep.
somebody. If not, and he handles that one by either kind of sitting back off of that one
Or clearing.
or just getting out in front of it. Um, that's where for me the gamble is, because if you can get around Skippy Longstocking, this race is wide open. Dynamic One is a dead closer, probably wants to go farther than what they're going to go the mile and the 16th on Saturday.
Yep.
Uh, that opens things up. For a horse like the one, who might even be the longest shot on the board if I'm looking at it, right. And this horse didn't run badly at all, and I don't think that the distance is a problem, even though he really hasn't done anything further than 7 furlongs or 7.5. Um, I think he just ran up into some tougher competition and kind of figuring his way out. This is probably a really good spot for a horse like this. The other one that kind of caught my eye was Sherlock's Jewel.
Yeah. And I'm going to pull up the race while we talk his last race while we talk about him, Barry,
Yeah.
because he's the horse who I like in here. But go ahead. Mention him a
Yeah,
little
he's
more.
kind of a hot horse. He's got on the dirt going long twice at Tampa, which is very key because Tampa's sort of a finicky surface, and not all horses kind of take to it. It's good to see that he rose up in class while being at Tampa on the dirt. This might be a good spot for him since he's the now horse.
Yeah, he's the 7 in the race we're watching. So he ends up getting hooked 4 wide in here. But I like how they handled him. They just sort of handled him like a horse that you wanted to keep out of trouble. He was drawn out wide. So they said, let's stay close enough, but let's not get caught behind horses or anything. And sometimes it's how you ride a horse that you're just really confident in. Both dirt races have been here at Tampa. They're both good. He took a little step forward in this one. Now, when you're comparing him to Dynamic One, Skippy Longstocking, even a horse like Dash Attack, his top game is not as good as any of those horses or what they've shown. But we have major questions about all of them. And this isn't about who at one point was the best horse or who will be the best horse in 6 months. It's who's going to be in the best shape to win the race on Saturday. I think it's this horse, as he now starts to move into third. And it looks like the top 2 are going to separate a little bit, but he just keeps grinding and keeps grinding. And he's not flashy in this race by any means, Barry, but I think it's just a really good spot for a horse like this who's in nice form against a couple other horses who are going to be shorter prices and have major question marks in here.
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely have to take a long look at a horse like this. He didn't get the greatest of trips. He was wide really much the whole way,
Yep.
and finishes strong here. That's very encouraging in a race where you got a whole bunch of horses coming off the bench. You got one, kind of speed horse that's stretching out for the second time. So there's going to be some zip up front. He might be worth a shot at a good number. I think that 5-1 is right on the money.
Yeah.
As far as the morning line goes, I think that's probably where it'll be, maybe a little bit higher, possibly.
Maybe even 6. Yeah, because I think he will be the 4th choice.
Yeah.
Right? Because it looks like the 3 horses that are just more known, Dynamic One, Skippy Longstocking, and Dash Attack has that big speed figure that sort of jumps out. And he's been in a couple graded stakes races. And so I think all 3 of them will be shorter prices. And it could just be a really nice spot. If Sherlock's Jewel can take one little small step forward here, that just puts him right in the mix with those horses.
I'm actually glad this race isn't in the late pick 5 because it's very tough.
It is.
I mean, it's a situation in a multi-race betting situation where it's almost like you either use Skippy Longstocking or not at all.
Yeah.
You could go all but Skippy in this race and it would make a lot of sense. Or you just take them and move forward. But I don't really like those kind of situations.
No, they're hard. Well, they're hard in the pick 4, pick 5 type races because then you don't know which. So for me, I'm probably just going to play. If Sherlock's Jewel is above 9-2, I'm just going to bet him to win in here and hope I can get a little some win money before the late exotics. I think that, and I can let the other shorter prices, beat me if they do. And then, I agree with you. I'm glad it's not a pick 4 race because it's challenging for the wrong reasons. I didn't want to use 2 or 3 shortish price horses. If I'm going to spread, I want to use some prices.
Right, exactly. That's why, the one kind of looks okay to me on the
Sure.
stretch out. Not to mention the trainer is lights out at Tampa so far. He's 2 for 4. I know it's not a big sample size, but he's using his go-to rider. They're 32% together. So it's definitely worth a second look.
There's race number 6, the Grade 3 Challenger. We'll move next to the Columbia $75,000 stakes race going a mile on the turf for 3-year-olds. And this one, horses that will take some support towards the outside. TikTok was in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, was only beaten a couple lengths in there, and he's been improving in each of his last starts. He was also in the Bourbon. I like the 10 a little bit. We can talk about Flaminio, who's getting back to the turf, like we see a lot of horses do at this time. Took a couple shots on the dirt to see if they could get maybe some Derby points or get qualified. Didn't really show the spark that they wanted. So now let's come back to the grass where he's been good. He can go third off the bench. The 7 in a jam has been in nice form over at Gulfstream Park, Barry, and there's not that much early speed in here. Maybe one or two others like the big long shot right inside of him, El Principito. I think those and then you got the 3 Move to Gold, another horse who will take money for Brown, who won the stakes race back at the end of October at Belmont. How do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, this is a tough race, and I had to go through it a couple of times to kind of get a handle on what's going on here. But I kind of feel like there's not really any speed in here. I mean,
I did too. Yep.
You look at In a Jam, and that horse was kind of going to the front in maiden special weight company. And then once he got out of that company, he came from pretty much a good ways off the pace. He was 7 back at one point and ended up winning by a neck. So I'm not really sold on that horse trying to go to the lead, even in this spot. Full Nelson looks very interesting to me. Getting Sammy Camacho, who's the leading rider at the track, or one of them. This might be one of those races where that horse like that can kind of steal a race like this, with everybody kind of falling asleep at the wheel at a decent price. Fulmineo definitely looks the part. I'm not totally enthused about the 10 hole.
Draw
But
is
you
not
can,
great.
yeah, you can kind of get your way out of that though.
They got to
It's
make a
not,
decision, right?
yes,
One or the other. Hey, let's be a little more aggressive and get into a good spot, or let's just drop way back so the outside doesn't even hurt us.
yeah. I don't think they're gonna drop all the way back like that because I don't think this race projects to be too speedy up
No.
front. So I would gather they're going to try to force the issue and trying to get a decent spot somewhere in the second flight, which would probably be perfect. Beyond that, it's tough. I mean, the Chad Brown horse Move to Gold looks good, but he's a dead closer. I don't know what kind of pace he's going to get to run into, and especially after being out since October. It's been a while. Man, this is another tough race where it's hard to figure out what's going to happen as far as mapping the race, but there's a lot of good horses in here that can finish. So this is a tough one for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna probably, because of what you said at the very end right there, I'm gonna probably use In a Jam because the versatility that he's shown. If they don't go that fast and Ortiz wants to put him there, I think he could. And then he can also pass horses. So in pick, I think this starts. No, this is actually before some of the early exotics. So this is another one I don't think that's like in any of the real.
I think he's in the pick 5.
Okay, so this starts late pick 5. So I would use him in a pick 5. I would use the 10. I would definitely use your 8 for sure, because I think he has a big opportunity to either get out front or sit very, very close in this race. I'd probably leave out Talk Talk in this race and try to play against him. I'd end up using, I think, 7, 8, 10 horses I like. Who else are we going to mention?
What do you do with the 4 here? I mean, this horse hasn't been on the turf, been running okay in some pretty decent races, and I don't even know what to make of him. I mean, that horse could win this race pretty easily if you just look at it. But
he's certainly classy.
Tough.
He's certainly classy enough. The Dam has a couple grass races that weren't bad. and then he's the first foal, so you don't really have a whole lot of direct pedigree, but the pedigree wouldn't say that anything against the grass at all. I'm not against him. And at the price, I'm completely fine with throwing him in the pick 5. See, I don't really love Move to Gold as much in
No,
here.
I'm kind of lukewarm on him. I
Me
mean,
too.
obviously he can win, but
Absolutely.
he's going to get bet, and it's
He's
like,
going to be way out of it, and we don't think there's going to be that much early speed from what
right.
he's shown. In both races, he has not been very quick. I know they went kind of fast early, but I would be a little Luke on him. And actually, I don't love the 3 or the 9 that much in here. In this, like, I kind of like some of the other players. So because of that, that's probably why I would throw the 7 in more, because I really don't like the shorter prices. I want to make sure I have that next tier of horses that I think are probably more logical at their prices, and could be a fun way to kick off the pick 5 here. I'm going to throw in the 4, who you mentioned, 2 Ghosts as well. The 1 to me is a price horse that I would at least include underneath, because while those last couple races, he didn't run all that well. When you keep moving up the speed figure ranking, like the speed figure ratings like this, when you're not running all that well and you're well beaten, I think sometimes it just shows you how difficult some of those races were that this horse was in. He's a little intriguing to me at a massive price. I would throw him in if you were really spreading out or looking for a nice underneath horse in some tries and supers.
Yeah,
Challenging.
he's definitely improving the one. And that race he came out of the last time with First World War
Was
was a
good.
pretty decent race. Takao
And there
came
was
out of that
not
and win.
much passing in that race. Those
None.
3 horses, First World War, Hammerstein, and Takayo, were all up close, and they were like 3-2-1. They just basically, there was not anything coming from the back that day. That was the first start in a few months. Now he's going to go second start at 3. Could be a little bit sharper here, save some ground from the inside. Maybe a horse, if you're going a little deeper, to throw into some exotics. That's race number 7. Let's move to the 9th. This one is the grade 2 Hillsborough. Barry, this field is absolutely loaded. Just going through the group, you've got Fluffy Socks, who's a multiple graded stakes winner and who was one of the top choices in the Pegasus World Cup Filly and Mare Turf. You got Market Segmentation, who's a grade 1 winner. You've got Sparkle Blue, who's a grade 3 winner, grade 1 placed, and she actually has the benefit of that recent prep race under her belt. So we'll talk more about her in a minute. Aspen Grove is a grade 1 winner. Beechnut Trophy is going to scratch out of this spot and look for a softer spot. I think once they saw who was entered in here, it was like, damn, this is a pretty tough race for the Hillsborough. You've got Elusive Princess, who's a grade 3 winner, who is group 1 placed, and Star Fortress, the horse who's is a real wild card. She threw in that monster effort at Churchill with the huge speed figure, so she's a grade 3 winner. This is a really strong group for the Hillsborough.
Yeah, yes, very, very strong. This is one of those races you might have to really take a stand because I don't think there's a situation where, especially with Beechnut Trophy out, not that one was going to be a pace presence, where Market Segmentation gets loose on the lead and they won't be able to catch him.
Yep.
Fluffy Socks needs a lot of help up front.
That's the problem with her in this spot, right?
Exactly. I mean, you saw the race that she won off the bench in May at Churchill, which I did cash that ticket that day on this horse, and hasn't won since. But a lot of runner-up finishes. You can see the record lifetime: 23 lifetime starts, 9 second-place finishes. So I know the horse has won $1 million plus, but likes to finish second a lot because I think a lot of that has to do with the paces of certain races.
Exactly. She can't make her own race. She's just at the mercy of where she'll always come running, but how is it going to be second, third, fourth, or win if she gets the right type of scenario or the right type of trip? So she's tough to love in here because how you mapped it out. And I agree with you. I think if you're playing pick 4s, pick 5s, Market Segmentation, I have to use. And I wouldn't even be against people that maybe wanted to single her. The only problem is that she has not run since July.
Right.
And that would be my
That's a
concern,
huge hurdle.
right? Like with trying to build everything around a horse like that. So while I do not think you can necessarily throw her out, I have to at least use probably one or two others in here. For me, Barry, I think I'll probably end up going 2, 3, 7.
Yeah,
I
the
like
7 definitely looks good to me.
the trip, right? The 7's going to get a great trip. Elusive Princess. She's tactical. She won at Saratoga really nicely. She was competitive against Group 1 company. And then at Keeneland, she was not far behind Maj. And Maj came back and almost won the Breeders' Cup Mile against the boys and earned a huge figure that day. So that race came back really strong. I think you have to use the 7 in exotics too because of the trip she could sit.
Yeah, and I also think that horse might go lower than the 92, which would bring the odds up on Star Fortress, who I think might be pretty good here too.
Coming back?
Yes, I think that this horse was a little bit overmatched, especially running a real big figure back in November um, in the Cardinal. I think probably needed that race, and this
And
one
it was
sets up a lot better.
we were totally against her
Yes, we
that
were.
day because she was coming off that monster figure. And this is something that you say a lot. She wasn't going to improve off of that race.
Right.
And she was the morning line favorite in the Pegasus. And she ended up going off at 7-2, which she should have been in that race something like 8-1. But she wasn't going to be because of the figure that she earned in the race before. So that felt like a great time to fade her. It might be time to cycle
Jump
back to
back
her.
on board. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, her
Ruby,
races overseas are probably better than all of these. That's why I can't ignore that horse. But it's going to be interesting what the betting ends up like, because there is a situation where Fluffy Socks might end up being the favorite.
and
Just
she,
depending,
yeah,
I mean, you look at her body of work and
it's
she's
good.
there every
Yeah, she's
single time.
accomplished.
Right. But just doesn't win a whole lot.
And this is another one of those races where it doesn't feel like it's going to shape up all that well for her, because a lot of these horses don't even have that in their arsenal. They don't even have the option of showing speed.
Exactly.
It's not like, one of these horses might. Most of these horses just aren't that fast. And so there are definite versions of this race where market segmentation goes, maybe Elusive Princess sits really close. Those two horses could be tough to get by. The other one I'm going to talk a little bit about and throw in is Sparkle Blue.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping she can be a little bit closer, just getting a little bit of a stretch out. She was at a mile and a 16th last time. A couple starts back, she was at a mile. Her form recently is really solid. And she lost last time to Walkathon, who went wire to wire. So she didn't get any type of pace. If there is pace, she will come running. If there's not, I'll have market segmentation, who will most likely be the one who goes wire to wire and gate to wire in that spot. But I really like that last effort from her. She's proven at a mile and an eighth, and she might just be able to sit let's play this out. So the 2's on the lead, I think, and I think the 7 is gone. I think the 7's sitting second.
Yep. Yeah, that's fair.
Can the 3 be sitting like third or fourth?
Yeah, that's where I would think both Star Fortress and
Sparkle Blue.
Sparkle Blue will be. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And so can they at least be close enough to where they're in the second tier and they don't have to go by everybody in here? Like, what the 1 might have to do, or what Aspen Grove might have to do. Those types, if you have to pass everyone in a spot like this, that might be difficult. These are some classy horses too.
Absolutely.
Going by this whole field. So we're looking for the horses who could trip out. For me, it's a little more Sparkle Blue. I'm with you, and I'll include now the 8 Star Fortress along with Elusive Princess. I think those are the ones to try to catch the right type of trip in here.
Yeah, this is a tough race, like you said, man. This
It's good.
There's another one where you could kind of use more than one.
Yeah.
and be okay. I guess the only horse that doesn't strike my fancy at all is the 6.
Yeah, it just seems a little overmatched, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah, but
everybody else, you could talk yourself into all of the others.
yeah, easily.
And you go from this 9th race, which is a more proven, accomplished group of hard-knocking horses with nice resumes, to a really big field of horses with massive upside. The Florida Oaks is just awesome race with these talented 3-year-old fillies who are all young, lightly raced, haven't done a whole lot. But I mean, you can, even at first or second glance, just go right off the bat and mark down 6 or 7, 8 horses you want to use in your pick 4s or pick 5s.
Yeah, I mean this race is wide open.
It's so,
uh,
yeah.
I can make cases for about half the field, and
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be surprised if any of those win. Um, there's a couple of horses that I think may be complete toss outs, like the 2.
Yeah.
But other than that, anybody could jump up and win this race. There's a couple of horses that really stuck out to me. The first is the 5
Yep.
Waskisu.
Yep.
Is that how you say that?
Yep. I think so.
Um,
Gaisu.
ran a really good race behind Ozara and Life's an Audible. And I'm not sure any of these other horses can kind of compete on that level. Maybe Style Points, who also finished behind Life's an Audible. But man, this race really sets up for this horse. There's some speed in here. You got the 1, the 2 that show some speed. Possibly the outside
pick 4.
horses.
Rather late.
Uh,
Hey, Pete.
Whitwater's Rand may be able to get up front.
So as you're
you think
talking, let's
Destiny's-
watch the 6 here. This is Waskaisu at Gulfstream last time. Like an okay start, but then right after the 5 comes out and bumps the horse,
Bumps
and you could see just farther back than they would have liked, because in her first 3 starts, she's right on the lead or sitting just off. So now all of a sudden she's 7th in this race, about 5 lengths off early. This
right,
is a
instead
totally
of
different
being
dynamic.
instead of being 3 lengths off, she's twice that.
And now
and
she's
has
got
to
to be
make
hooked
up
wide.
ground. Right.
Yep.
has
And
to
now
make
she's
up some
3 to 4 wide. She ends up kind of sitting 4 lengths off. But now look at her. She's in the 4 path out here.
Yeah,
And
that just doesn't win at Gulfstream very often.
no, not at all. But even with this trip, look at where she is on the head-on right now. She's way out in the middle of the track with the yellow cap. And she's still, even giving up all this ground, she still makes a big bid up to challenge. And she just ends up losing the photo for second. This is a very nice third. And the top 2 who finish in front of her, they're very good. They both came back again this weekend or last weekend, and they were, I think, underneath. They finished second and third. They both kind of had no excuses in that most recent race, but they're good, nice fillies at the level. Look at her big, it's like a 5 wide bid right here. She's right up into contention, but she has every right just to get a little tired when a horse like Ozara sat a much better trip and saved all the ground.
Yep, absolutely. Another thing that's worth noting is the pace of that race. She kind of closed into made a middle move into a fast pace, which typically, at least on dirt, isn't the most ideal thing.
Exactly.
But on the turf, you can come back and run a way better race doing something like that, being wide. I think a lot of things are aligning for this horse to win on Saturday. Another one that kind of caught my eye too is Pharaoh's Wine. I think the Swedish Chant
Completely
is
agree.
kind of a live race. The horses
too.
coming out of that race seem to be primed to dominate this one with that one and dynamic pricing. But obviously getting Irad on the outside. Jose Ortiz on the outside after that real closing kick she showed in the Swedish Chant. It's going to be tough to fend off that horse, but it helps that horse is on the outside. But I think Pharaoh's Wine is going to be right with that horse, or maybe even a little bit ahead and get the jump. Whether she's good enough or not to finish it off is another story. But I like that comeback race. It's on par with what she was doing last year, and it signifies another jump up.
The 4 in this race we're watching is Pharaoh's Wine. Style Points was the 3. Dynamic Pricing was the 6. They're all in this race, and they're all live. I mean, none of them would be a surprise to win the race. But the 4, Pharaoh's Wine, I'm glad you mentioned her, because she just misses the break here. and she gets sort of crossed over on. And she was a horse who had been more tactical too in her more recent races prior to that. She was
Yeah,
never
much
last,
closer up. Yeah.
never last in any of those races. And they had to, at this point, now you have to sit, right? You're not going to just rush up in the middle and be sitting 4 wide, because then you have no chance. At this point, you have to just try to sit, relax, and hope the race comes back to you. And it just doesn't set up all that well. She actually ends up tipping out. So just keep an eye on the 4. And she moved. Look at how wide she is at the top of the lane. She's like 7 wide back here. And then she just kind of looks like she's way, way out of it in the middle of the track. And she actually kind of comes onto the screen late. This was a weird race, Barry, and I think there's some stuff to take out of it. Like, you see her kind of pop up in the middle there, where it almost looked like she was being eased. I'm going to throw her in to some exotics, pick 4s and pick 5s. I think in a race like this, she's the type of horse at the type of price you're looking for.
Exactly, and could get a nice trip.
Mm-hmm.
I like the post position. As long as she gets out of the gate well, I
Save some.
think Danny's going to get her in the right spot
Yeah.
and at least, have a chance.
Yep.
Whether she's good enough is a whole nother story. But I know for a fact that Danny's going to get this horse in the right position.
One of the horses that was right in front of her too, and she's really hard to knock off of her last couple efforts, is Style Points, who was a winner 2 back at Gulfstream, and then she just put herself in a really good spot in the Sweetest Chant. She got outfinished by Life's Inaudible. She's another one of those horses who, I mean, she's logical in here. This is a race where you're probably going to have a bunch of horses between 4 to 1 and 8 to 10 to 1, all in that range, and she's right in that range as another major player.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's hard to knock that horse's races.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you throw out the first one, obviously, but
And
got
she was
way
favored in that
better.
race too.
I know, and stung people the second time. I'm sure people kind of jumped off after
Yeah.
that effort, and she jumps up, wins after a nice little, freshening, and then kind of continued forward. So these are the type of horses that jump up again because they're so young and they're still trying to figure it out. But Style Points definitely has to be a major contender here for you.
Because we use Life's Inaudible as kind of the measuring stick for a lot of these fillies, right? Who have been in races against her. And we know she's good. And these fillies that have been close to her, that means they should be players in this race, because she would be the favorite in here if she were in here. So, you mentioned dynamic pricing, obviously a contender, but with the post, it won't be easy. What a challenging race. Just a really cool betting race. Anyone else that we haven't mentioned that you wanted to throw out there?
No, I mentioned dynamic pricing, but the wild card horse is the outside horse.
Mm-hmm.
Whitwater ran.
Because we
I
liked
really
her a
don't
little
know.
last time,
I know
and
we
she just
did.
missed the break. It was her first start on the dirt. She missed the break, and she just didn't get into it. Was it the dirt? Was it the slow start? But she's worked a couple times on the grass recently, and the one of them on February 25th looks really nice.
I would think so. I mean, it's just a tough call. I mean,
Yeah,
what are
the
they going to do?
pose
I think they're gonna force the issue, which is
have
probably
to.
a good thing.
Yeah,
Because it's not going to get too crazy up front. I don't know, but it could be. The 1 and the 2 could just run off and open this wide up for everybody, kind of charging down the lane. If that doesn't happen, Whitwater Sand might be in a good spot to kind of stalk and get first run. And again, if good enough, could possibly win. I mean, at least her figures on the synthetic were kind of competitive with these.
yeah. She's sneaky. This really fun pick 4, pick 5 type of race. You have Austere, who was only beaten 2 lengths in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies turf, but in a really wide open race like this, making her first start of the year, first start since November. At the price she'll probably be, I like others just a little bit more than her, but for her to win this race, that'd be absolutely no shock.
Yeah, I could see a whole bunch of horses winning this race.
It's
Even the 6. I mean, the 6 looks good and might even float up in price. And
yeah.
there's a lot of directions this could go.
Crivald Oro just broke the maiden after running some good races prior to that. Good luck. We both started with the 5, so make sure to use this one in your exotics. Just feeling like she could get a very nice trip now, sitting off the pace a little bit, and yeah, just it feels like this is going to set up pretty well for her. It's the 5, 8-1 on the morning line. I think she'll get bet a little bit, but should be a fair price. Should be a great stable duel type of horse to use too if you're playing a stable duel lineup this weekend at Tampa. Let's finish things up, Barry, in the Tampa Bay Derby. This is going to go as race number 11. This is the Grade 3 Tampa Bay Derby. Kentucky Derby points are on the line. So now think about this. Where we're sitting right now, we've got the Tampa Bay Derby coming up this weekend. Following the Tampa Bay Derby, next weekend, there's a little bit of a break before we get to that last round of all of the preps, because after that we have March the 23rd, Louisiana Derby and the Jeff Ruby. March the 30th, you've got the UAE Derby early, you've got the Arkansas Derby, the Florida Derby. Then on April the 6th, you've got 3 preps, Santa Anita Derby, Bluegrass, and Wood Memorial all that day. So one real big prep race at a lot of the major tracks that have these Kentucky Derby preps. We get into the Tampa Bay Derby, where 2 horses are heavily favored or heavily backed on the morning line. The 5, Domestic Product, who was your runner-up in the Holy Bull behind Hades, and you have No More Time, who won the local prep here in the Sam F. Davis. Neither one of these horses has real monster overwhelming speed figures, but they do have better than the rest of the group. That's just, after those 2, you have a bunch of horses who aren't that proven, who might need to improve, but you have a maiden who actually has one of the better figures in the race here on the outside, sturdy.
Yeah, man. This is just a wild race. I mean, I could say this about the whole card. It's a sneaky good betting card because there's no superstars, but every race is competitive. Yeah, it's kind of like a horse player's dream, and I think there's some opportunities here for prices, especially in this race. I mean, I'm gonna lean towards the favorite. Funny enough, something I don't really do very much in Domestic Product. I think this horse is just on the rise.
Me too.
I can't really sink my teeth into No More Time.
Me neither. There's one horse I'm going to use
things
with
that can go wrong.
Yep. I think last race was No More Time's race. That was the one coming off a little bit of trouble in the Mucho Macho Man. They rerouted No More Time from the Holy Bull to the Sam F. Davis. It all played out. The horse was 10-1 on the morning line, ended up getting bet down. Wasn't a lot of other speed in there. They got aggressive with him. It just seemed like it was a perfect storm of everything coming together for him in that race at the right time. And he'll probably run fine in here because it's not the strongest race in the world, but I much prefer Domestic Product if they're anything close to the same price between the 2 of them. I just think there's a way more upside with the horse like Domestic Product taking one more step forward. And in this race, Barry, he will probably get a little bit more pace to chase than he did in his last start, where Hades just went wire to wire. I think it just, you have a few of these horses stretching out that feel like they'll be more forwardly placed to make it a little harder on No More Time. I think the 5 is hands down the horse to beat. There was one other horse that's kind of a fun, sneaky price that I'm probably going to use along with him in some.
I hope he says the 9.
The 9, Grand Mo the first. That's the one.
Yep. That's the one I kind of zeroed in on, and a little bit with the 8 if things get a little wild. Yep. But yeah, I mean, they're really, it's just crazy, man. Like you could make a case for the maiden. You could make a case for the maiden.
Absolutely. I think in a here's the thing. I prefer the maiden in this race to No More Time, especially at the price they're going to be. Not the most likely winner of this race, but if you're asking me, am I playing a pick 4? Do I want to use No More Time at 7-5, or do I want to use this horse at 8-1? I'm using the 10 every time.
Yeah.
Instead.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to go with the price. And
his debut race, he loses. He's behind Locked and Drumroll Please, and he gets bumped early, just way out of it. Then his second start, he shows nice improvement. He's behind Domestic Product, who just sits a way better trip that day. And then he's off from October to February. comes back in February. He's just a little short in that race, a race that has come back strong based on speed figures. Now, he's obviously has to win, but there's, as you said, there's nobody in here that's so scary to where you actually wouldn't say, yeah, this horse could really compete with this group.
Yeah, I mean, there's no world beaters in here. This isn't like, one of the horses that are getting a lot of attention in this race. These are all kind of the same sort of deal. Like all the horses are all on the same plane here.
You take you take domestic product out, right? Who does look above so far coming
slightly,
off this last, just the one last race, right? That's it. But slightly, that last race is better than pretty much what anybody else has done. But he's not like a horse that you can't beat. And after him and after No More Time, they're all really similar on paper. There's not a whole lot of difference between them.
Yeah, what's funny about that is there's two things that kind of caught my attention is the horse that Irad is riding. You kind of have to pay attention to him because he's usually on the best horses no matter what. And it's kind of curious where he lands and who he's riding for. He's riding for Brown instead of Pletcher. And I actually kind of like the one a little bit in this spot. I think the horse kind of showed some improvement, especially switching back to the dirt last time. And, Irad doesn't really waste his chances. He doesn't waste his mounts for anything. So I'm kind of curious, and I want to see what
the four hat. Yeah, a little bit of intriguing, right? With the difference between these two, because you got Jose on the one, Heartened, who is sort of the progressing. Then you've got the 4 Good Money, where Irad shows up for Brown. And they're both going to be pretty fair prices in here. And you sniffed out the long shot that I like, the 9, who, I mean, you just go through his career. First 2 races on the synthetic, they're solid. Third start, a little bit of a slow start, but he ends up finishing a nice third. He loses to a horse named Endlessly. Endlessly is a horse who came back and won the El Camino Real Derby. Endlessly was only 5-1 in the Breeders' Cup in the juvenile turf. This is a nice horse. And Grandmo the First was not far behind him. And as I pointed out, Endlessly actually qualified now for the Preakness by winning the El Camino Real Derby. He picked up that automatic berth to the Preakness by winning that one. And then coming off of the 4-month layoff, he finishes a fine third. And he actually he was wide going into the turn, and he got over to the rail. It's a little bit flat-footed at the start, and he was, 5th. He was in between horses, but he ended up having to go around widest of all. The runner-up moved up the inside. So while he wasn't going to win that race, he absolutely could have finished second. That was just his first start. And I think we have to make sure that when you're looking at a race like this, you don't want to always think about it in terms of, wow, Grandmo the First, can he win the Tampa Bay Derby? That means he's going to be maybe a Kentucky Derby horse. This horse doesn't really look like he's a Kentucky Derby horse. Yeah, you can't always think about it that way. I've heard people think about it in that sense sometimes, like that horse can't win that race, but it's not that way always, right? Some races are just tougher and others aren't. And this isn't that type of race to where any result would be all that surprising. There's just no monsters in here. There's none of the real top, 15 proven 3-year-olds right now, right? Of all of those.
Well, that's why you kind of have to, or kind of want to, give Sturdy a shot here.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
You see the company that horse has been keeping, and the 2 races that Sturdy ran last year were against Locked, drumroll please, Domestic Product, and he was right there. He just didn't win.
Mm-hmm. So Grandmo the First was the price for me, but we both feel like Domestic Product is going to be pretty tough in here. A fun Saturday at Tampa Bay Downs. It's the Tampa Bay Derby. Barry, are you heading out to Tampa?
Absolutely.
Barry Spears will be out there. Make sure to go and say hello to Barry. Talk to us about what's happening over with Going in Circles and Big Mondays.
Big Mondays is always on Tuesday.
Always Monday.
But we have we have some good things coming up. Chuck is gonna do his writing that he does on our website, which is a great thing. He's one of the best writers in the business, especially because we're kind of a little bit independent, so he can speak freely.
Yeah.
And it
It's
not
not
offensively, it's just freely, where
honestly, that's,
yes,
like, and not have to pull punches. It's not that he's trying to go after anyone or anything, but sometimes, when you're involved and you have relationships, you can't
it's tough.
always
Yeah,
be on. Yeah, we know how it is when you work with someone or you're working with them. Sometimes it's hard to really be able to speak your mind, and that's what's nice when you're in the situation you are, where you guys can really talk about have
some tough stuff,
discussions
some
and
issues.
topics
Yeah,
that other people don't really want to address.
absolutely, and that's why I'm enjoying it. And we speak freely on our podcast as well, and we talk a little hoops, we do a little everything. So check us out if you haven't already. But we're every Monday/Tuesday, and look for us on Twitter/X.
Barry Spears is also going to be here with me each and every week talking races. We always pick out a sequence, or maybe we'll just give out some of our best bets at Gulfstream Park some of the time. But over the next month, 6 weeks, will be a lot of Kentucky Derby prep weekends and big races and horses on the road to the Derby and all those big undercard stakes races at each track. We hope you hang out with us here. Make sure to follow Barry on all social medias. You can check him out on Twitter at Urban URBN Handicapper. Give me a follow. It's me, Gino B. And if you're listening on the podcast, make sure to subscribe to That's What G Said podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. Barry, buddy, thank you so much. Good luck this weekend. Have a blast over at Tampa, and let's make some money out there. All of you, thanks so much for hanging out with us. You get the soothing sounds of Joey Cleveland as we say goodbye.